Questions orales, oral questions.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
WTF.
Here, here.
Hey everyone, quiet down. There's a bulletin on TV.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
The one we call Canadians.
But let me ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, will there always be a Canada? There will always be a Canada. All right, elbows up. Elbows up.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We have issues in Canada, right? Unless you're completely head in the sand, be aware of this. In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups. The globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Official agent, only one per riding. Clear. In an election.
All right, gang, just to get going, we've got some pieces from committee meetings that were taking place this morning, some things from the House of Commons floor. We'll get right into question period right on time. Like, we've got about 45 minutes before we'll cross over, but we have some interesting videos here to watch. Stuff goes on outside of question period, like a lot of stuff. Anyways, we're going to check out some of that went on this morning.
Another thing that I think has been perhaps overlooked over the years is the role of the witness. The witness
Kingsley,
is defined as...
if you can wrap up, I gave you a bit more time in terms of your...
well, perhaps there will be a question about what the witness should do. I can take it very quickly. The witness right now is anybody. Doesn't have to be a resident, doesn't have to be an elector, doesn't have to be 18 years of age or over. And the witness should also be forced to sign his name over a statement that says, I have exercised due diligence to verify each signature and its appropriateness for this purpose. And I'll deal with penalties if there are questions about penalties. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll turn to the Conservatives. Mr. Culkins for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and I think we'll get right to that question, Mr. Kingsley. It's good to see you again. I might be the only one at the table that has been here, and you signed my first writ of return that hangs in my office from the 2006 election, which I think you oversaw. So I want to thank you for your years of service in overseeing elections, Canada.
Thank you, Mike, buddy. Appreciate it. It's wicked. Good to see you.
For as long as you have. I'm sure you've been watching the testimony here. I've advocated several different things. First of all, I thought the government of the day made a mistake in 2017 by not appealing the decision out of the Alberta court that removed the $1,000 bond. If I could just quickly get your thoughts on whether or not, given the shenanigans that have happened since that bond has been removed, do you think that there is enough of a case that could be made to reinstate that bond?
I would hesitate to do $1,000, sir.
Okay.
If it has to be reinstated, it could be somewhere in the hundreds, lower hundreds.
Okay.
To act as a kind of a natural barrier, but $1,000 becomes substantial.
Okay. Well, that was the argument that was made to remove by Mr. Shushkevich, Kieran Shushkevich, at the court, and he actually said that he made the case that it's there to protect the election from the integrity of the election from frivolous candidates. I would suggest to you that this is an orchestrated campaign by the longest ballot committee, which appears to be operating in the entirety of a structure of a political party. It's got central, we've heard witnesses here say that it's got central communications. It knows how to play the game. It knows what it's doing, and they're running multiple candidates in one riding. And while you might have mentioned several of the by-elections, they're also doing this during the general election as well. So if we're not going to have the bond, and if you think the bond is not there, what's the number for the number of signatures then? Because I would suggest to you that if it's 100, the government of the day in the last parliament suggested dropping that down to 75. How many is required? How many is sufficient? Is it 250? Because in some places like Nunavut or places where there's a lot of small, remote, rural communities, it might be difficult to get those signatures in an amount of time. So is that the solution?
Well, in my view, the solution would be somewhere along the lines of what I recommended. You can only sign once. And in terms of numbers, I thought the number of 100 did not create a problem in most ridings, and in the rural ones, it's 50 that is required.
That's right.
Yeah.
But now if you've got 200 candidates, each with 50 signatures, and we've heard the current electoral officer say that it's hard to even find employees to work elections, how many more staff and how many more resources would it take to cross-reference 200 candidates at 50 to 100 signatures apiece to make sure that they're all individual? That's a lot of bureaucracy, is it not?
I agree with you, and that's why I'm saying it should be, you can only sign once. So if you get 100 people who sign one another's documents, that doesn't fly anymore with the recommendations I've made.
Okay. And I think you've both intimated that you should only be an official agent. Mr. Blanchette and you, Mr. Kingsley, have both said that you should only be an official agent in one riding. That makes sense to me in terms of a by-election. But should you be allowed to be the official agent in 343 different electoral districts?
My answer would be no.
So
because it's a ridiculous situation.
Well, yes, but I mean,
ridiculous.
But
so
you did. I'm just getting clarification, sir. Should you be allowed to be the official agent just one for one candidate and one candidate only for the entirety of the general election, or just for one candidate in a constituency during a general election?
The reason I did not elaborate on that is because I do not know what the practices are for political parties. I don't know if political parties favor one agent for a number of candidates, 10, 15. And I said, I'm not going to go there so that I don't make a recommendation of which I do not understand the consequences. But ideally, I would easily have no problem living with only one riding.
Okay. Mr. Blanchette?
Dans le fond, l'idée, c'est que...
The idea is that there should be one official agent who has a single candidate per riding, and that would not prevent an official agent from having candidates in other ridings. In Quebec, there are parties that have a single official agent for 125 candidates. But it would be somewhat unusual for a candidate. I'll give the example of the federal level is the same for the Liberals and also for the Conservative Party. That would be unusual. So you wouldn't have that an official agent in Quebec that is represents more than one political party. You can have one single candidate per riding. And so you can be an official agent in a different riding.
At a time, I'll go back to you, Mr. Kingsley. Given I believe that it was a travesty of the election. The longest ballot committee's actions made a mockery of our election process. Does the election law need to be changed so that people can actually? I asked the question of Mr. Thomas Shuskevich when he was here if he'd been reprimanded, charged, or faced anything like that. Should there be some provisions in the law for those who make a mockery of our electoral system?
Very short answer, Mr.
Yes, there should be. And the Commissioner of Canada Elections should determine whether it's a compliance agreement, a fine, or prosecution before the courts. And I will say one thing, if it is a candidate, whether elected or not, that willfully participated in this, I think the solution should be in a court of law before a judge in Canada.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr.
We'll begin the first round of questioning, which is 6 minutes, with Madame Falk for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to both of our witnesses for being here and sharing your experience and knowledge with our committee. I will begin with Mr. Worswick. So my first question, how does Canada's current immigration policy impact the labour market for young people? So particularly when it comes to those early entry jobs?
Well, if you define the immigration program broadly to include the temporary migration program, then as I argued in my opening statement, I do think that there are concerns that we have admitted a large numbers of temporary residents under different categories, including the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, International Mobility Program, and International Student Program, who all have, to differing degrees, the capacity to work for income. And so all these people typically are quite similar in age to young Canadians. And so it's reasonable to think that they're competing for similar types of jobs. Now, I'm not saying every temporary foreign worker competes directly with young Canadians, but I think there's a lot of overlap there. That's why I stressed in my comments about the international students, because I think international students tend to be near campus in cities where a lot of young Canadians are on average. And so I am concerned that, this is, putting downward pressure on wages, and in cases where the jobs are close to minimum wage, it may be creating youth unemployment.
Okay, so beyond the labour market, if we talk beyond the labour market, what broader impacts do you see stemming from the current immigration levels?
I mean, the labour market's the obvious place. I mean, I guess housing could be an issue. I don't consider myself an expert on housing economics, but, we need, whatever population growth we have, we need to have growth in dwellings to match that. And my sense is that hasn't kept up. Large population growth requires that our public health system expand proportionally, and I'm doubtful that that's happened. I've seen numbers to indicate that that hasn't happened. So those sort of what I would call regulated parts of the labour market be where I would be most concerned. I think you can expand economies with immigration. You can do it in a way that wages do not need to fall. It's not a guarantee. But if immigration or temporary migration is concentrated in particular segments of the labour market, you can see negative outcomes there, even if you're not seeing average effects. So it comes down to, in the labour market setting, are the immigrants or temporary migrants, are they substitutable in production with the people you're concerned about, in this case, younger Canadians?
Well, I know something that I have heard over and over so far in this committee is this isn't siloed. So it seems like the government, just through their questioning, is led to believe that our labor impact is siloed and not affecting these other facets. I mean, people need a house to live in. I mean, when you look at health, you need good health to be able to work. We also have mental health. So there's these wraparound services that also need to be available and accessible. And so I guess that's where my question's coming from. Like, how much of this is affecting these other areas that then, it doesn't matter if you are a temporary worker here, you're still having access to health services and et cetera, and so are Canadians, right? So how much of that is impacting other things and, and making the ripple effect?
Well, they must be connected. I haven't seen quantitative studies to say how important they are. But I think, I think what we're seeing with international students, what we saw is, a lot of people, many people living in small dwellings, right? And that, even if that, you say, well, that's the international students, they're choosing that perhaps out of necessity, that's still going to have an impact on that part of the housing market. I think for some temporary foreign workers, they probably alleviate healthcare shortages. Like I'm thinking of nurses' assistants, PSWs. But it's very hard to get doctors accredited in Canada if they're foreign trained. So it's very hard to see how, that part of the healthcare system isn't under strain because of the population growth. So, I don't think this isn't meant to be a negative statement about immigration. It's more that if you have high levels of immigration, you need to have all sectors of the economy growing, and highly regulated sectors haven't been growing. And also, I think that there's a temporary permanent issue that we tend to gloss over in Canada, and I think we should be looking at permanent immigration, because those workers will have more rights, they can move to whatever best job is for them, and that's what we did, prior to 2000, almost exclusively in Canada.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lang, thank you for your opening remarks. How important is it for young people to have access to an entry-level jobs as a stepping stone to their career development or goals?
Yeah, critically important. The Deloitte research that I quoted, they also showed that there's a term that they call scarring, and when young people are unemployed for long periods of time, the evidence shows it affects them the rest of their lives, and by the time they're 40, they can earn as much as 20% less employment. So that's a GDP issue. But also we know employment's a social determinant of health, so that all kind of winds into that as well. So it's really critical that we act and do all we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Now, Mr. Jennis for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. Last week, we announced a Conservative Youth Jobs Plan, and one of the pillars of it was fixing immigration. So, Professor Borswick, appreciate hearing your reflections on the immigration policy problems and their impact on youth unemployment. As part of our plan, we also recognized and highlighted some of the differentials between urban and rural areas by promising policies to make it easier for employers to attract employees into more remote areas with workforce housing. And I note in your testimony, you highlighted how immigration policies of the current government have exacerbated unemployment, in particular by bringing newer immigrants to urban centers, in many cases with already high levels of unemployment. And this shows particularly how there's been a misalignment between the immigration policies pursued by the government and the labor market needs. On this issue of the urban-rural distinction, what policy changes do you think could help unemployed people in areas of higher unemployment consider opportunities and take opportunities more easily in areas with lower unemployment, often rural or remote areas?
So you mean people within rural areas move to higher income areas or wage areas? Or,
people who are living in areas with high unemployment, who might want to consider opportunities in regions of low unemployment because they're having trouble finding work where they are. What kinds of policies do you think can make it easier for people to take some of those opportunities?
I mean, obviously there could be informational barriers. People may not know about opportunities. I mean, it's costly to move, and there's a lot of risk. So there may be scope for government programs to support that type of thing. That could be expensive. So I mean, my view is I'm a little bit of a laissez-faire economist on a lot of these issues. I do support our social safety net. I think we do want to, as the other speakers say, help people up when they're down. But I think whenever we do a program to try to help people move or change, retrain, I think we should be doing pretty rigorous cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, I agree, and we're not proposing a sort of program to do that. What we're proposing is an incentive to make it easier for employers to attract folks. Can I ask about just kind of your analysis and your dialogue with the government around it? You've done a lot of analysis showing how a suite of immigration policies the government has pursued have contributed to higher youth unemployment. You've spoken and written a lot about this whole area. Does the government have its own analyses that contradicts your analysis? Did they come up with numbers previously to justify the previous policy that are different from your numbers, or is your sense that they pursued these policies in the absence of that analysis?
I haven't had that kind of dialogue with the government, to be fair. So I haven't seen numbers that suggest this was, I mean, I think that these policies didn't have the negative consequences that I'm sort of arguing that they did. Obviously the previous federal government did change direction on some of the policies, as was already noted. And, I think I have interactions with researchers in IRCC, and I know the government's been concerned about getting the non-permanent population rate down from around 7.2%, if I remember correctly, to under 5%. I would say 5% is historically extremely high. So, we went from an even more extremely high level down.
Sorry,
to
my clock is ticking. I just want to understand. So have you seen an economic analysis done by them in advance of these policies, though? Is that publicly available? Have they shared it?
No, I have not.
No. Okay. Do you think they've done an economic analysis of this, or?
To my knowledge, not prior to the changes that we saw.
Okay. Just very quickly, you didn't mention the significant growth in inland asylum claimants. Right. Do you see that as contributing to the youth unemployment problem as well? People that often have to wait for years before their claims are adjudicated?
I haven't actually looked at that, but it's a candidate, certainly. Yeah, it's not an ideal situation. I tend to try to focus more on the economic programs, given my expertise, but obviously, everyone needs to work or generate income. So it
has economic implications. Yeah. Thank you.
Madame Fancy for 5 minutes. Madame Gill, Ms. Goodrich for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank both the witnesses for being here today. I will start with you, Mr. Lang. Would you say that there's a tendency from this Liberal government to spend millions on strategies and roundtables rather than targeting the root cause of these issues?
I've definitely seen, as I said, from ESDC or other departments, investment in organizations like ours, which we greatly appreciate. But certainly the last government did cut funding. I mean, it was said that they didn't cut funding. They were just oversubscribed, and to me that was hard to hear, because that means you cut funding from organizations like ours and gave it to new organizations. So that was I think a mistake, because they don't understand that also means not only the cuts, we then have to lay off people, pay severance, pay leases that we don't have programs for. So as I say, I go back to, if programs work and you're reaching your targets, they should be at least maintained or continued. But then, as I said before, I've seen organizations that get tens of millions and again have these roundtables and fancy websites and 17 executives for every position. I mean, I go back to our organization. We have my VPs wear 3 or 4 hats. IT programs. They do 3 or 4 things, because we know every dollar saved can go and help youth. So I have seen that, and hoping that again through today that everyone, I think we all agree that more should be done for organizations that have real impact. And I think it's important to look at what is real impact. I mean, I go back to the Yes scan, what was it called? What was their name? The
We Charity?
I forgot the We Charity, yeah. And we used to say that their impact, they counted the whole school as impact when they really just met maybe the student council or volunteer. I mean, so I just use that as the example. So even when you have organizations that they have impact, I think it's important to look close. Okay, what is your impact? I mean, ours is clear. It's jobs. It's, we get tens of thousands of people. Do we put them into employment, or it's true we include impact as going back to school or into some sort of training? But what is the impact?
So I appreciate that, and I guess it leads into my next question. Do you track the percentage of youth from your internships, placements, mentorship programs, et cetera, that remain with the employer post-program?
Great question, because and we get it all the time. We, just because of our own resources, track them up to a year. But then beyond that, it's hard. But I mean, usually if they're in employment for a year, we know anecdotally, and because I've met people who have been out 20 years and they say, you changed my life, and so on. So we know that the hardest part is really getting their foot in the door. I mean, because sometimes, as you can imagine, with things that we take for granted, if they have, even in their, it's really sad situations, their own home, they might have a parent saying, you're no good, you're a loser.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We have a limited amount of time.
Sure, yeah.
I share your concern. I think it's absolutely shameful that for the last 10 years, we've had a government that's spent tons and tons of money on all kinds of make work projects, We Scandal. There's so many scandals that have just added up. And then what we are seeing, the result, is youth unemployment crisis. Like I'm the member of parliament for Fort McMurray Cold Lake. People from all across the country, all across the world have come to Fort McMurray for generations. We've seen no housing starts this year in Fort McMurray because we don't see any growth, because all we see is anti-development policies coming from the government. Do you think that the anti-energy policies from the government are having an impact on youth jobs?
That's probably out of our area of expertise. So yeah, I probably couldn't comment on that.
Liberal anti-energy policies are having an impact on the youth employment in Canada?
I'm not sure I can link it directly to youth employment, but I think it's fair to say that if you're, I think if the energy sector were allowed to grow more quickly, I think it would improve employment generally in Canada.
Well, so I'll lay out a few facts. Fort McMurray has a very young population base. We have a very high percentage of people that work in the energy industry, and therefore there is a high percentage of young people that are working in the energy industry. So when you are doing things to restrict the energy industry from growing, and in fact actively shutting it down, that has to have an impact on youth employment.
Rich, your time is gone.
Asking questions between 2.5 and 5 minutes.
All right, gang, just so everybody knows, we will go straight into question period. I've got it here in the background, but they're not in question period. Usually starts around quarter after the hour, but we have these clips from committees, so we're going to check them out. They all happened this morning.
I'm going to turn down to Ms. Goodrich. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the team for being here, and congratulations.
Lila Goodridge is on a couple of committees, so she was a busy lady this morning.
Ms. Hogan, on your 5-year anniversary. In your report on childcare, you say that the Liberals have fulfilled their responsibilities, and you quote that when it comes to flexibility, but there's no metric on flexibility. And in your report, you actually state that families outside of the standard hours are struggling to find care. So I'm just wondering how you can say that they are meeting their responsibilities.
So I said that the federal funding has led to improvements in early childhood and learning, but it is still time left, right, to decide whether or not all of the responsibilities have been met. The federal funding has helped reduce the cost of childcare. 5 provinces and 3 territories are already at $10 a day, which is ahead of the deadline of 2026. Additional spots have been created, but there's still a lot of work left to be done there. But then it was impossible for me to evaluate other areas, whether it came to accessibility or the quality of childcare. So while the funding's helped improve this situation, there's still room for improvement.
So do we have any idea how many kids are still without care?
Well, all I know is what the federal government received from the provinces and territories, and I can highlight what Statistics Canada would tell you, that there in 2021 there was 2.2 million children who were aged 5 years and under, and more than half of them were in childcare, and that it was at an average cost of over $30 a day. So the fact that 112 spots have been created, which is less than half of the target, is why I raised the risk that filling the 250 spots or creating those 2 spots might be very difficult to achieve.
Do you know how many of the new spots are actually filled?
And that's actually a piece of information that the federal government isn't gathering from the provinces and territories. In fact, they turned to another Statistics Canada survey to understand why parents may not be taking up the new spots.
So part of why I asked this is Ontario Auditor General recently studied this, and they actually found that 27% of spots weren't being filled.
That's very concerning to me. We're spending a lot of money. The Liberals keep boasting about how much money is being spent. We don't actually know how many kids are actually seeing the benefits of this.
So you actually raised something that I've been working on with some of my colleagues in the Provincial Auditor's General Office. We felt that it was important to try and coordinate some of our work on topics exactly like this, where there's a lot of federal funding, but a lot of the heavy lifting happens in the provinces and territories. And so there will be 2 other provinces who will be looking at this as well. And I think it's important so that you can see the picture from the start to the finish, where the funding comes from and then how it actually happens.
Is there any standard information being collected across the provinces on this?
So there is some information being collected, but what the government did was they allowed every province and territory to provide it in whatever format they want.
Okay, cool.
There's flexibility in the agreements to make sure that they get consistent and standardized information, which is why we recommended that.
So I'm going to shift gears over onto the First Nations report. I found the information in that incredibly troubling. As the Member of Parliament for Fort McMurray Cold Lake wildfire is something that is very familiar to me. You stated that not all provinces have wildfire agreements. Which provinces have wildfire agreements?
So there are currently 5 provinces that have wildfire agreements. It's British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. But I think what's important to note that it doesn't mean that every First Nations community in that province is signed on to that service agreement.
Okay, so then in my home province of Alberta, how many First Nations are without? That aren't covered
I don't
under that
have
agreement?
that specific level of information. I'm going to see if perhaps Glenn can add in something there.
In the province of Alberta, 25 of the 48 First Nations are not covered
So
by
half.
that agreement. So about half. Yes,
Half
correct.
aren't covered under the agreement, and you only have agreement, or the Government of Canada, the Liberals only have agreements with half of the provinces. How many territories are covered?
There are no territories that have agreements.
So this is an abject failure.
This is why we concluded that the progress on our recommendations from a 2022 report were unsatisfactory. There's a lot of work, and I think that Indigenous Services Canada really needs to rethink how they approach engaging and working with First Nations.
And they're trying to get to these tripartite agreements between the province, the nations, and the federal government. How many of those exist? It was announced in the 2019 budget.
Mm-hmm. So in 2022, we actually looked at agreements, and there was 6 emergency service agreements that had been put in place. None of them were tripartite. They were just moving to tripartite. They were sort of dual party agreements.
So 6 years post announcement in budget, and there's still 0.
Well, right now, what even more concerning is there's less service agreements, right, between 22 and now. And I think a service agreement provides the clarity to First Nations communities on what to expect in an emergency. And even if you're working towards something new, you could renew contracts that expire. You could put something in place to provide some clarity and certainty to First Nations communities.
Thank you. That is the time, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Chair, and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. A pleasure to meet you both before committee started this morning, and very glad to have your expert testimony. We've had a number of experts from different political fields, so I appreciate your comments and your opening statements, both very specifically about the official agent piece and the signatures piece. I think we're hearing from experts that they seem to feel that those are reasonable restrictions to put in place in terms of 100 unique signatures as well as 1 official agent per riding. I would just like to talk about the signatures piece a little bit more, and perhaps to you, Mr. Kingsley. Your successor, Mr. Perot, was here, and he was very clear that the checking of signatures would be very difficult to do, that it's not currently being done. And so, in your experience, what provisions would need to be added to Elections Canada, their roster, to be able to actually meaningfully check signatures to make sure that if this provision is put in place, that they are unique to each candidate, should the committee and indeed the House of Commons decide to enact such a change?
Well, when Mr. Perot said that it was difficult to check, I presume he meant it was difficult to check from candidate to candidate. Because right now, the returning officer has an obligation under the law to check each signature. That's in the statute as it exists now. Now, I don't know if technology exists now, but the names are printed. It may be possible to photo that and keep on doing it and get the computer to check them as they come in, because you have so many days left in the election to allow that to happen. If we're talking about a normal riding with 7 to 10 candidates, in my mind, it may become something that is possible. It would add responsibility to the returning officer, but he must also remember the returning officer, he or she also has staff. And I think it becomes something that can be envisaged, in my mind.
Just to follow up on that, an example was given to committee by Ryan Davies from the Northern Perspective. I don't know if you watched that testimony, where they had photographic evidence that had been posted by longest ballot committee members on social media accounts of pages of signatures that did not have a candidate's name at the top of the sheets when the signatures were being collected. Northern Perspective says they submitted that to Elections Canada for review, and Elections Canada said that they had no evidence that any claim or request for a review had been submitted. So I'm just curious to know the mechanism behind the scenes at Elections Canada about how a question mark around signatures would be investigated and could be either legitimized or not if there's a concern.
Well, the Chief Electoral Officer has the option of referring matters to the Commissioner if he finds that something is amiss in the process. If it becomes to the stage where remedial action cannot be undertaken to his or her satisfaction. And this is how the accounts of members of Parliament and of candidates are reviewed. They're reviewed by Elections Canada. Difficulties are reviewed and solved between the candidate and Elections Canada. And where they cannot, they're referred to the Commissioner. That's how that refers to. And there were, when I was there was about, if I remember, a couple of hundred references made at every election because it could not be resolved. So
you feel quite comfortable if 100 unique signatures as a provision were put in place that Elections Canada would be able to thoroughly vet those 100 unique signatures and ensure that they are in fact unique from candidate to candidate?
Well, one thing I will not do is speak for my second successor. But I think it is something that definitely needs to be looked at in terms of the technology that exists, especially as you have said. Another matter which might be possible, I don't know that this one becomes more difficult, would be to expose online the signatures of the people who have agreed to substantiate a candidacy and let ordinary Canadians review that.
Interesting.
That may be more difficult because of the fact that you're talking about 343 ridings or whatever, and getting posted from each returning officer to head office. But, you know, technology is evolving so fast.
Johnson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yeglick, for your report. But I have to say, the fact that we're talking about bait and switch in government contracts today is, to me, it's outrageous, and it should be for all Canadians. Canadians expect that when their government signs a multi-million-dollar contract, that the people hired to do the job are the ones who were promised. But your report shows that in many cases, companies win a contract by proposing top-tier experts and then quietly replace them with less qualified staff once the ink is dry. You describe this as bait and switch tactic and potentially violating procurement rules and possibly crossing the line into fraud. Can you explain what you mean by bait and switch in federal contracting?
So I don't want to be too nuanced, but I've described it somewhat as bait and switch light and then bait and switch, which includes the fraud element. So the fraud element includes intentionality on the part of the supplier. And so just to clarify, our mandate is to review the practices of federal departments. And so it's difficult for us to assess the intentionality of the supplier. And so it would have to be putting forward resources with the intention to never having them perform any of the work. And that's what gives rise to the fraud. What we've identified in the report, in the 41% that you rightfully identify, is there's still a risk to the procurement of that specific contract. And how this plays out is that in the selection criteria, typically the methodology in many of these contracts is either balanced on an 80-20 or 70-30 split, with the technical being the 80 and the financial being the 20, meaning if you're evaluating resources, that ultimately is and can be the tipping point for the decision as to which supplier is successful. And so here in the examples that we've highlighted, it's where you have decided that the resource and their skill set matters. You've chosen to evaluate them. You do evaluate them. You base your selection based on that evaluation. And then in the actual performance of the contract, there's a replacement of that resource. And so that's the component that we identify as problematic.
What does that say about the integrity of our system when companies can profit off taxpayers by offering one thing and delivering something completely other?
And so, to be fair, as we mentioned in the report, there are a number of reasons why replacement might take place. And so we want to make sure that that's also clear to the viewers and to the members of the committee, is that there's a multitude of factors that could result in the replacement of resources, one of which is timing. So what we put in the report is just to give you an indicia of how long it sometimes takes to go from the bid close period to contract award to the actual tasking. Now, the counterpoint to that is everyone involved in the system understands that. So you're still attesting to the fact that you're going to provide these resources, knowing that there's going to be delays throughout the process. So it can't be an argument to say delays unto themselves are a surprise, because that's normal. So what I will suggest is that we've essentially agreed that this is a highly problematic practice, that the tools existed at the time to better enforce and prevent the instance of bait and switch. However, the department has opted to go in the path that they have, which is to promote the use of corporate criteria as the new determining factor. So it takes away the emphasis on the individual resources and places the emphasis on the corporate entity and the experiences of the corporate entity.
So what your report shows is pretty simple. Companies are winning government contracts by promising top-notch experts, then swapping them out for people who don't have the same skills once the deal is signed. And instead of using the tools that they already have to stop it, the government's main contracting department decides to stop checking the qualifications of the people doing the work at all. So help Canadians understand this. Why would a department decide it's easier to change the rules than to enforce them? Like, what does that say about to taxpayers who just want to know that when they pay for quality, they actually get it?
Right. Thank you for the question, Chair. So again, I obviously am not a spokesperson for the department, nor should I be. But based on the information provided to us as part of the review, the changes made also align with a broader change towards a solutions-based environment, meaning that the contracts that we looked at were task-based. And internally, I've used kind of the example to demonstrate the difference, and I was just waiting for the opportunity to tell it, so if I'm allowed, I will. But the difference between a task-based and a solutions-based opportunity would be, in layman's speak, I need my lawn cut on Tuesdays, and I will pay you on a weekly basis, would be an example of a task. In a solutions-based environment, I tell you that I'm an individual who travels a lot, who wants a nicely maintained lawn, but isn't around to figure out how to have that done. And the solution offered would be to provide a solution to my problem, as opposed to the tasking. So hopefully that centralizes the difference between a task and a solutions-based. So the government is moving towards more of a solutions-based environment where there's more emphasis on creativity on the part of suppliers. So again, I'm not a spokesperson for the department, so that's essentially the decision that was taken. I will say that there were subsequent changes made effective in July of this year, also around professional services, that include things like a cap for the total value of professional services that can be contracted. And I'll leave it there.
Floor for.
All right, gang, we're going to cross over to question period, which I think we've got ready to go right here. Look at that. Like we knew what we were doing.
In the history of sport. While others will no doubt pay tribute to our beloved Blue Jays here this afternoon, I'm here to celebrate the many Special Olympics athletes joining us in Ottawa today. For 6 decades, Special Olympics has changed the lives of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities worldwide, including over 40,000 Canadian athletes who participate today. One of those athletes is my own son, Jaden, who radiates pure joy whenever he has a bowling ball in his hands. Another is Damien, a multi-sport Special Olympian and athlete ambassador I met this morning. Damien is carrying the torch in a way that would make the legendary Joey Moss proud. I also want to salute the incomparable Mary Davis, CEO of Special Olympics International, soon retiring after 47 years of tireless leadership in the organization. As Special Olympics Canada prepares for the 2026 Canada Summer Games in Medicine Hat, I know colleagues from all sides of this House will join me in recognizing their invaluable contribution to our country.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, as you'll see, community spirit runs deep in my riding. This year we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of La Petite Maison de Pointe-Calumet. Founded in 1995 by Diane Grenier, La Petite Maison has grown thanks to the commitment of passionate individuals such as Melissa Corbeil, the current director, and her dedicated team. With more than 550 people assisted and dozens of volunteers, the organization supports families, children, and seniors on a daily basis through projects such as the Community Garden, Collective Kitchens, Food Aid, and the Petite Boîte PREF. Mr. Speaker, at La Petite Maison, the expression, "it takes a village to raise a child," takes on its full meaning. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois and my constituents, I invite this House to join me in wishing La Petite Maison de Pointe-Calumet a wonderful anniversary. To all those who, for 30 years now, have been cultivating hope and solidarity there, thank you. You make all the difference.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, small businesses are the backbone of our communities. They create jobs, spark innovation, and build local pride. With October 19th to the 24th being Small Business Week here in Canada, I'm reminded this week and every day just how much small businesses in my riding of Bay of Quinte provide to our local communities. This week is about recognizing the hard work, creativity, and resilience of small businesses, especially through these challenging times. Small Business Week is also a moment to reflect on the challenges ahead and recommit to supporting every entrepreneur with the tools they need to thrive. Our government stands with you, ensuring you have the opportunities and tools to shape Canada's future. I look forward to honoring some of these businesses at the Quinte Business Achievement Awards this coming Friday, where many local small business champions will be recognized. Thank you to all the small businesses of Canada and to those of the Bay of Quinte.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Centre, Marpole.
Mr. Speaker, residents in Richmond are deeply concerned about the Covington land ruling. This decision raises serious questions about long-standing private property rights in British Columbia. People want to know if their land titles are secure and what this means for their homes and their future. Yet the Liberal government has remained silent. There has been no explanation, no reassurance, and no plan. As a result, Richmond is holding a public information session on October 28th so residents can get answers that the federal government has failed to provide. Property ownership is a foundational Canadian right. Yes. It's not optional. It's a responsibility of the federal government to protect it. Canadians are watching, and they expect this government to stand up for their rights, not stand by in silence.
The Honourable Member for Mount Royal.
Mr. Speaker, today I want to welcome Jewish community leaders from the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs and the Jewish Federations of Canada who are here on Parliament Hill for their annual Advocacy Day. They come at a time when Canada's Jewish community is facing an alarming rise in anti-Semitism. Though Jewish Canadians make up just 1.2% of the population, we make up 70% of all religious-based hate crimes in this country. In 2024 alone, police reported over 900 such incidents, the highest number on record. Across Canada, synagogues, schools, and community centres have had to assume extraordinary security responsibilities, spending more than $40 million each year to keep their members safe. These leaders are here to call on all of us, regardless of party, to confront anti-Semitism with the seriousness with which it deserves. There have been firebombs, people assaulted, Jewish students targeted on campus, and this must end now. Let us stand with Canada's Jewish community and affirm that hate has no place in this country.
The honourable member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has dropped another bombshell, and it landed right on the steps of the Canada Revenue Agency. The AG reports that the CRA answered just 33% of the 32 million calls it got last year. 33% is not a service level, it's a batting average. Perhaps the Blue Jays should hire the CRA. And when a call was answered, 83% of the responses given by the CRA were incorrect. Less accuracy than a Liberal budget projection. And here's the ticker. Call center employees don't even have to worry about giving the wrong answers. In performance reviews, CRA rates showing up for work and going on coffee breaks is a higher importance than delivering proper responses to taxpayers. Now, the CRA can't answer phones, but they've increased the amount of audits they're doing on Canadians by 10%. This is not a public service. It's a disservice to Canadians. After 10 years of Liberal mismanagement, Canadians deserve better.
The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to highlight the presence in Ottawa of a delegation of entrepreneurs and economic leaders from the Greater Quebec City area, led by Quebec International and its president and CEO, Carl Veal. In these times of economic uncertainty, these women and men brilliantly embody the dynamism, creativity, and know-how that are the strength of our regional economy. Their presence here demonstrates a firm commitment to building bridges, sharing their expertise, and exploring new avenues of cooperation with the federal government for the benefit of Quebec as a whole and of Canada as a whole. I join my colleague, the Minister of Government Transformation and Member of Parliament for Quebec City Centre, in extending our warmest greetings to them and in recognizing their outstanding contribution to innovation, job creation, and the sustainable prosperity of our communities. The Quebec City region stands out as a gateway to America, an economic engine, a hub of innovation, and a true source of national pride. Welcome to Ottawa, and thank you for putting Quebec City on the Canadian and international map.
The honourable member for Huron-Bruce.
Mr. Speaker, last night for a few hours, we were a nation united, gathered around our TVs watching the Toronto Blue Jays beat the Mariners in 7 games and reach the World Series for the first time in 32 years. The season started slow, but around the middle of May, something clicked. Playing with grit, hustle, good pitching, defense, and no easy outs in the lineups, the Blue Jays went 73-45 to finish first place, and we haven't looked back. We love Vladdy, and we've dreamt of what he could do since we signed him at 16 years of age. Gossman, Yasavage, Bieber, Scherzer, Hoffman, the list goes on of all the great pitching. And Kirky, how can you not admire him? A fan favorite. And the everyman in the lineup. In George Springer, who found the fountain of youth and had a career year. We love these Blue Jays because 41 million Canadians can see themselves in them. An underdog, hard work, never give up, and belief in yourself. A little more, that's clear.
The honourable member for Brampton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, October is Women's History Month, a time to honour the women who have shaped our country and to recommit ourselves to building a Canada where everyone can thrive. Today, women hold nearly 43% of leadership roles in Canada, a real improvement from just a few years ago, but representation is still uneven. Indigenous women, women with disabilities, and other marginalized women remain underrepresented, especially in senior and board positions. These numbers remind us that equality is not guaranteed, and it's something we must keep working towards. That's why I was proud to join the Reaching the Unreached event earlier this month in my riding of Brampton Centre, an organization dedicated to empowering and supporting women. I spoke with community leaders and discussed how we can continue to break down barriers for women in every sector. This month and every month, let's continue to advance gender equality and uplift women everywhere. To everyone watching, happy Women's History Month.
Oral questions.
Here we go. Let's get it going.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Here
Each
we go.
and every dollar that this Prime Minister spends costs us. Each dollar is expensive for Canadians. This government and the Justin Trudeau government doubled inflation. Today, Statistics Canada published new numbers according to which inflation is rising. 4 indicators are higher than projected, and grocery prices are going up twice as fast as the target. Will the Prime Minister, in the upcoming budget, decrease his taxes and inflationary spending so that Canadians can lead affordable lives? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to see that the opposition leader is excited for November 4th. I'm excited too, as are Canadians. Why? Because we will have good news on November 4th, Mr. Speaker. We will present good news to Canadians. We will present an ambitious plan. Last week, I was in Washington, and the Director General of the International Monetary Fund gave Canada and Germany as excellent examples of countries with the ability to make generational investments. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to build a strong, ambitious Canada in which Canadians are happy and proud. Mr. Speaker, we don't work for bankers in Washington. We're here working for single mothers who can't pay their bills, who can't afford groceries. The inflation rate is exploding, and this means that Canadians have to spend 70% more for the Canada Revenue Agency. Today, the Auditor General revealed that 15% of calls to the CRA are answered at some point. But even if you can get someone on the phone, you get the wrong information 83% of the time. Why do Canadians have to pay so much for such poor service? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have even more good news for the opposition leader. He'll be happy to know that on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we have already taken action. We presented a 100-day plan to fix the situation at the Canada Revenue Agency, because on the government side of the House, we know that we have to do better. We know that we have to give Canadians good information. We know we have to be helpful. And we do something else on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, we respect people who work in public service. We respect public servants, and we will always do our best at all times to serve Canadians.
He admits they have to do better. It's not possible for them to do any worse, Mr. Speaker. The reality is today we learned that inflation is again on the march. All 4 measures of inflation are above Bank of Canada's targets. 2 are outside of and above the acceptable range. Food price inflation is rising 2 times the rate that Bank of Canada targets. No wonder we have 2 million people lined up at food banks every single day. This inflation has exploded since this Prime Minister doubled the deficit. Will he reverse his inflationary deficit and taxes in this coming budget?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all know in this side of the House and Canadians, math might not be the cup of tea of the Leader of the Opposition. Neither may be economics, Mr. Speaker. But let me quote one of the authorities in the world, which is the Director General of the International Monetary Fund, Mr. Speaker. She said just last week, then we have countries in the G7 that are in a better position. Germany and Canada stand up in that regard, Mr. Speaker. Both Germany and Canada recognize that this is a very testing time and they need to use their fiscal space. In the case of Canada, the Canadian authorities have been very decisive in taking action. Mr. Speaker, we're doing it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, his banker friends in Washington may think that they have fiscal space, but the single mothers who can't afford groceries have no space left at all to pay for liberal inflation. This government is forcing them to spend 70% more on the Canadian Revenue Agency. Today, the Auditor General revealed that only 15% of calls get responses on time. And even if someone does pick up the phone, there's an 83% chance they give you the wrong answer. Why does this government force Canadians to pay so much for such terrible service?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against dental care, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against the National School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against farmer care, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against the programs that would support Canadians in time of need, Mr. Speaker. No one on this side of this House will tell us what to do. We're going to fight for Canadians. We're going to make Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Another day, more costly slogans from that member of Parliament.
Things are getting out of hand.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition from the top.
Another day and more costly slogans. But now Canadians are learning it was a bait and switch. Today, another terrible tragedy. As they laugh, 1,200 workers at the Ingersoll Cami plant learned that they would lose their jobs after that Prime Minister promised he would negotiate a win and that he would keep their jobs here in Canada. They join with 2,000 workers in Brampton, many more in Oshawa. How does the Prime Minister look in the eyes, the very workers that he sold out and betrayed?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
I'll tell you how the Prime Minister will deal with the auto sector. He will look at the auto workers in the eyes and he will say, we will fight for your job. And that's exactly what we're doing. Every single day, we're negotiating back in Washington, but also, this is important to say that I met this morning with the Canadian CEO of GM. I was in conversation with the head of the labor union of Unifor, and I also talked to Doug Ford, and I talked to Vic Fideli. And you know what? We're putting in place a response group. We will make sure that we fight for these jobs. We need to make sure that...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
She announced just now that she talked to this person, and she talked to that person, and she talked to this other person, and she talked, and she talked, and they talk, and they talk, and nothing gets done, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are tired of talk. They want their job. This government, for this Prime Minister, looked these workers in the eye and said he would negotiate a win, that he would protect auto jobs, that there would be an all-in-Canada supply chain that would keep them working. They even gave $250 million tax dollars to GM for this plant. And now those workers don't know how they're going to pay their bills. How does this government explain the broken promise and betrayal?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Fight for these jobs and we will hold the companies to account.
That's right.
That being said, let me talk to you about important jobs.
Round up.
150 new jobs in St. Bruno at Alstom, 700 new jobs at AstraZeneca,
Here, here.
500 new jobs at Ferrero in Ontario, K&S Potash, 50 new jobs, Hitachi Energy, 500 new jobs. This government is building a strong Canadian economy.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the University of Quebec in Montreal was wise enough to forbid or block a conference of Imam Farouk, but he will still be in Brossard. That imam, that preacher, he will be able to spread hatred and he will foment hatred legally in Canada. And why will he be able to do that? Because he legally has the right to do so. Will the government eliminate the religious exemption from the criminal code? The Honourable Minister of Identity and Canadian Culture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we share the Leader of the Bloc Québécois' concerns. Hate speech does not belong in Canada. That's why the Minister of Justice is taking action through Bill C-5. We are especially targeting hatred. During the last legislature, we tabled legislation against hatred. We are going to do everything we can to ensure that hatred cannot exist in Canada. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Minister of Justice is not really getting at the core of the problem. The real problem is the religious exemption, which is still in effect. Spreading hatred is illegal in Canada unless it's for religious reasons. So, for instance, if a woman is assaulted in a war zone, for example, by Hamas in 2023 in September, that can be exempted as a religious exemption. Are those liberal values, truly? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have already said, and I will repeat, that hate speech has no place in Canada. The Minister of Justice has offered to work with the Bloc Québécois on reforms which are before this House. Through Bill C-9, Mr. Speaker, we're ready to work with them to improve the situation and to ensure that there is no hate speech in Canada. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, there's an incredibly easy way to solve the problem. And the government would be able to be proud of what it's doing rather than doing something shameful. They can eliminate the religious exemption from their own bill. I encourage them to vote in favor of our amendment to eliminate the religious exemption and to forbid hatred and incitement to violence in our media and on our streets, even though that may be against multiculturalism. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-9 is currently being studied at the Justice Committee. We welcome all committee members to suggest amendments to the bill. We will hear from experts, subject matter experts. We're ready and willing to work with the Bloc Québécois and with all parties in this House to ensure that hate speech is not in Canada.
We all know the Prime Minister doesn't shop for his own groceries, so maybe someone over there should tell him what's going on with food prices. Food inflation has now reached the highest level since 2023. Fruits, vegetables, meat, even Halloween candy. Everything's getting more expensive and rising faster, not slower. The cost of living is soaring because the cost of government is soaring. The Prime Minister is spending more than even Justin Trudeau did, which means higher taxes and higher inflation for everyone who lives in the real world. So does the Prime Minister realize that his out-of-control spending mean real costs for real Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Speaker, time and again we see those Conservatives fight against policies that Canadians not only are benefiting from, but that Canadians are asking that we make permanent. Things like the school food program, Mr. Speaker, which many advocates and indeed families have praised. In fact, in my own riding, I heard just yesterday from a food partner that's working with high schools to make sure that kids get access not just to fresh food, Mr. Speaker, but the ability to learn how to prepare it themselves. These are the kinds of things that are helping Canadian families, and every step of the way, those guys fight against it.
Exactly. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Speaker, is that Liberal minister who sat here for 10 years while people lined up at food banks, and that's what she has to say. Runaway Liberal deficits, doubled grocery prices, and now the same people who caused the crisis think that the solution is just to spend more of other people's money. It's not just Liberal deficits driving up food costs. They voted against removing every hidden food tax that they themselves imposed. Packaging taxes, the industrial carbon tax, another 17 cents a litre because of the fuel standard. It's a religion to them. Food prices are soaring, fridges are empty. Why don't they scrap the hidden taxes?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Great job, Mr. Speaker, again, we see that member and indeed the entire Conservative Party pretend that there is a tax on food. Canadians are smarter than that. They know when they go to the grocery store that food is not taxed. And so instead of imaginary problems, we're coming up with real solutions. solutions on this side, Mr. Speaker, whether it's for families, whether it's for seniors, whether it's for workers. We're here for Canadians, both in the good times and the bad. And Mr. Speaker, I just add that I hope that this concern is going to translate into support for our budget that will be tabled later on.
The honourable member for Newt-Tecumseh-Gwillimbury.
Greeters at Walmart grocery stores are no longer saying hello, they're apologizing. But it's these Liberals who should be apologizing for their inflationary deficits that have driven up food prices. Inflation data out today confirms food prices have once again skyrocketed, up 4% as everyday groceries become even more unaffordable for families. So we just need the number, Mr. Speaker. How much higher do food prices need to go before the Liberals admit their policies are starving Canadians?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Mr. Speaker, our colleague referred to apologies. Perhaps he'd like to lean forward a couple of rows and suggest to his boss, the Leader of the Opposition, that he should apologize to the men and women who serve in Canada's RCMP for attacking their integrity and attacking the work that they do to protect all Canadians. He should be ashamed of himself. He pretends to stand up for the police. He attacks them unfairly, and he should apologize to the women and men who serve in the RCMP. That would be a good apology, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Newt-Tecumseh-Gwillimbury.
They're so focused on listening to their own spin, they've tuned out the grumbling sounds of millions of hungry Canadian stomachs. The Prime Minister said he would be judged by the prices people pay at the grocery store. Well, with food prices up another 4%, thanks to his Liberal government's inflationary deficits, Canadians have made up their minds. He's an empty suit making empty promises that have led to too many empty stomachs. How is this acceptable?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We recognize on this side of the House that families need supports in meeting affordability questions. This is why we have supports in place and why time and time again we have stood for the National School Food Program, for early learning and childcare, making it affordable and accessible across the country, dental care, the Canada Child Benefit, and at each and every opportunity the members opposite voted against these supports for families, for children, for Canadians from coast to coast. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal government, everything is costing more, especially food. New food inflation data shows prices in Atlantic Canada are climbing faster than the national average, and in Newfoundland and Labrador, they're under tremendous pressure. Our province already has the highest unemployment rate in the country, yet families are being hit again at the grocery store. Beef up 14%, sugar up 9%, and meat up 6%. Runaway Liberal spending is fueling inflation, and every dollar they waste makes life harder. When will the government stop the reckless spending and start making life affordable for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome this opportunity to share with the member across the way from Newfoundland and Labrador that a single mom in her riding who earns $15,000 a year can now access up to $25,000 because she will automatically get the benefits for her and her children. This is good news, this is affordability, and this is not a slogan.
Bravo! The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, while they brag, more and more people line up at the food banks in Newfoundland and Labrador.
That's right.
They voted against our motion to reduce food costs. It's not good enough. Sneaky, hidden Liberal food taxes, like the clean food regulations, are driving up food costs. And since March, food prices have risen 48% faster in Canada than in the U.S. This year alone, food banks are expecting 4 million visits. When will the Prime Minister end his inflationary spree and finally make life affordable for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to again remind my colleague of the benefit of the school food program. I have spoken with moms who absolutely absolutely grateful. Their children now have food in their bellies and are not separated from all the other children that can expect the basic right to have food in the mornings. I also want to remind my colleague of the importance of the dental program, the child benefit, and also $10 a day child care. This is affordability. It is not loose slogans.
The Honourable Member for Richemont-Arthabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, inflation is still out of control under this Liberal government. The government is spending more, and Canadians are the ones paying the bill. Today, Stats Canada announced that consumer prices rose 2.4% year over year in September in Canada. What's worse, in Quebec, they rose 3.3%. Furthermore, Quebec was one of the provinces where gas prices increased, rising by 2.7%. Liberal deficits are very expensive for Canadians, but even more so for Quebecers. When will this Prime Minister finally get his deficits under control to ensure that Quebec is no longer the inflation champion of Canada? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, our friend across the way previously sat at Quebec's National Assembly, where decisions are made differently. We have chosen to support families, to support childcare and daycare services, to support pharmacare, to support seniors, to support young people. And I think he would have made the same choice at the National Assembly of Quebec, though. So why is he rising to criticize us? Is he going to vote against all of our supports? If so, he should admit it. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-l'Île. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine being that disconnected from Quebecers? On Thursday, the federal government announced that it will invest $52 million for Quebec's healthcare system, but not to treat people and patients. No, they're investing $52 million to anglicize our hospitals. Mr. Speaker, what our hospitals really need is money to treat people, not money to make Quebec more English-speaking. English is doing just fine in Quebec, including in hospitals. When will this government stop its crusade to make Quebec more English-speaking? The Honourable Minister of Identity and Canadian Culture. With all due respect to my colleague across the way, Mr. Speaker, he knows full well that our government is the one which has done the most for official languages in Canada through the reform of the Official Languages Act. We have invested $2 billion in official languages, and for the first time, we are going to meet our Francophone immigration outside Quebec targets, and we're even going to triple those over the next 10 years. We're the first government to do so much to take this type of action. We are also helping Francophone communities outside Quebec. What the member claims is totally false. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-l'Île. English is far from being under threat in Quebec. It is unacceptable to waste $52 million of our money to make our hospitals more English-speaking, instead of spending that money on treating people. Naturally, the Quebec government has criticized the move. I quote the Quebec government, "Once again, the federal government is encroaching on Quebec's areas of jurisdiction. It should instead take the funds and give Quebec an unconditional transfer to let the government, which is responsible for healthcare, decide how to spend the money." Mr. Speaker, why not transfer the money to Quebec so that it can be put to good use? Good use meaning treating Quebecers. The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, I'm shocked, and I think most Quebecers are shocked too, because our government is investing in essential services. We're investing in language minority communities throughout the country. For instance, we've helped the Georges Dumont Hospital in Moncton. We've helped healthcare centres in the prairies. We are investing, of course, in healthcare in Quebec. Quebecers are shocked by what the member is suggesting. Is the member really suggesting that we should deprive Anglophone Quebecers from receiving healthcare in their first language? Is that what he's suggesting, Mr. Speaker?
For Calgary East.
This Liberal Prime Minister's economic record is even worse than Justin Trudeau's. By doubling the deficit, he's making everything more expensive, especially groceries. Today's devastating inflation numbers confirm Liberal deficits are crushing Canadians. Rent up 5%, groceries up 4%. The four core inflation numbers all above the bank's target. This so-called budget experts
math is not mathing. Will these Liberals stop their inflationary deficits that are driving up the cost of living?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the Conservative Party opposite has a hard time, but here's some facts. 21 straight months in the targeted inflation rate from Bank of Canada. Our economy grew jobs in September. We have the lowest debt in the G7, lowest deficit G7, lowest net debt to GDP in the G7. Mr. Speaker, our economy has had challenges, but it is strong, it is growing. Our Prime Minister was elected to build the strongest economy in the G7. That's exactly what he's going to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary East.
And yet this Prime Minister has built the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. And did these guys learn anything from Justin Trudeau that the more they spend, the worse it gets for Canadians? 10 years of deficit spending has left Canadians with high inflation, and it's only getting worse. And in typical Liberal fashion, this Prime Minister promised to cap government spending, yet he's going to double the deficit. After 10 years of these Liberal deficits, what don't they understand? The more they spend, the more expensive things get for Canadians.
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, again, let's look at facts. Our economy is not shrinking. Our economy grew. It added jobs. Interest rates are down. Inflation is with targeted rates. On November 4th, we're going to table a budget. We're going to spend less. We're going to invest more in capital projects. We're going to invest in nation-building projects, infrastructure, housing. We are going to build the strongest economy in the G7. We're not going to take any lessons from somebody that's never worked in the economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Or had working
The
earnings.
Honourable Member for Hamilton East.
Over the past weekend at Halloween events in Stony Creek, the crippling cost of living was the hot topic at my booth. New inflation data confirms all three core inflationary measures are above target. Grocery inflation is up 4%. Rent inflation is up nearly 5% in the last year. Liberal deficits are driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. Will the Liberals get their inflationary deficits under control to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know where the party opposite's been, but we know where the leader of the opposition's been. He spent the last week peddling dangerous far-right conspiracy theories about law enforcement in our country. He should apologize. While he's been attacking the rule of law, Canada's new government spent the last week announcing a new suite of affordability measures to strengthen the rule of law, crack down on crime, keep Canadians safe, which will be included in our first budget. I urge Conservative MPs to speak up, stand up, call on the leader opposite to apologize. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener South, Hespeler.
Speaker, what Canadians care about is the cost of living, and the more these Liberals deficit spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. New inflation data today confirms this. All three core inflation targets are above target. Rent is up 5% over the year. Groceries are up 4% over the year. After 10 years of their deficits, the cost of living in this country cannot take anymore. So will the Liberals stay on focus, get their inflationary deficits under control to make life more affordable for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Small Business, Tourism and Gender Equality.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians trust that our government has their back. Why? Because we are making life more affordable, and we have cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. This is allowing Canadians to put more money back into their pockets. And speaking of food, Mr. Speaker, good news. Our government is making the school food program permanent. This is going to put $800 back into Canadians' pockets to actually feed healthy meals at school. And also, 5.5 million low-income Canadians will automatically receive federal benefits through CRA tax filings. This is real, tangible benefits for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katiskamik, Témiscouata. Mr. Speaker, last week in my riding, I spoke to families who are struggling to make ends meet. In a country like ours, it shouldn't be like that, yet Quebec is seeing inflation rise to 3.3% because of this inflationary Liberal government. As a result, the price of gas, rent has gone up by 10%, groceries has skyrocketed. Families can't do it anymore. Will the Liberals finally get their inflationary deficits under control and make life more affordable for Canadians and Quebecers? The Honourable Minister for Government Transformation. The answer is yes. The member voted against every support measure that we've put forward over the last year, so he is not credible in his question. If we want to talk about credibility, Mr. Speaker, we know that there are still reasonable Conservatives. Vicious attacks from the leader of the official opposition against the RCMP is unacceptable, against the rule of law is unacceptable. We see it on the radio, we see it on social media, on TV, but no one across the aisle has attacked the leader of the opposition to say that it's unacceptable. Will one of them finally do so?
For Markham, Duke-Bill.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be part of a new government that has championed trade diversification since day one. We've broken down internal trade barriers within Canada, and we've signed new trade agreements with Ecuador and Indonesia. We're moving at a pace and intensity that Canadians expect of us. Can the Minister of International Trade update this House on our government's latest action to expand and grow our trade relationship with the United Kingdom and what it means for Canadians?
Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Good news, Mr. Speaker. Today we table legislation to expand the CPTPP trading bloc to welcome our partners from the United Kingdom, a major step forward for Canadian trade. Why the UK, Mr. Speaker? The UK is Canada's third largest trading partner. Last year alone, they represented $28 billion of Canadian exports. That's billions of dollars of Canadian products produced by Canadian workers in communities across Canada, Mr. Speaker. This is yet another step forward in our trade diversification efforts. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, after the Prime Minister failed to negotiate a win with Trump, Canada's auto industry has been hit yet again. Devastating news from this morning where over 1,200 highly skilled auto workers at the Carney Ingersoll plant are being laid off by GM indefinitely. This adds to the 2,200 job losses in Oshawa and the 3,000 announced in Brampton. The Liberals have sold out our auto workers. So will the Prime Minister finally admit that he's lost control of the wheel and is driving our auto sector off the cliff?
Yeah! Way to go!
The Honourable Minister for Industry.
Colleague comes from the region, and I look forward to working with him to finding solutions. Obviously, we will fight for these jobs. Not only will we do that, but this morning we were already on the phone with the company to be in solution mode. We were with the GM CEO, with the Unifor Labour, and also with Doug Ford and Vic Fideli. Our goal is to bring back a new model to Ingersoll, and we're on it. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Oxford.
I've been talking to the auto workers who are losing their jobs now because of their failed policies. An auto worker in Ingersoll called me this morning and says he doesn't know how he will pay for his mortgage. He doesn't know how he will feed his family. There is a real sense of anxiety in our community. The Liberals blew billions in EVs, and now Canadian workers are the ones that are paying the price and their families. So, will the Liberals finally hit the brakes and stop selling out Canadian workers?
L'Honorable Ministre de l'Industrie.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague is right in saying that there's real anxiety right there, and I agree, because I've been in contact with workers and I feel it as well. So our goal is to make sure that we are able to bring back jobs to Ingersoll, to work with the company, to work with the government of Ontario, to work with the labor unions. But meanwhile, we'll make sure that we continue to engage with the United States, because at the end of the day, we know that this is because of the unjustified tariff by the President against the auto sector. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, this news out of GM today is another devastating blow for auto workers. It comes less than a week after Stellantis announced 3,000 layoffs as they move production from Canada into the U.S. The Prime Minister looked Canadians in the eye and promised that in exchange for their votes, he would prevent auto sector jobs from happening. Well, they're happening. If the government included a Canadian-wide job protection plan in their $15 billion deal to Stellantis, they can simply invoke that clause. The minister who signed the contract should be able to answer this question. Did they include a jobs protection clause in the contract to Stellantis?
L'honorable ministre de l'Industrie.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Conservatives have been wanting to see the contracts that are linked to the Stellantis plant. And you know what? We've said yes. So the opposition on the committee will have access to the contracts. And they will discover that indeed we negotiated well. And indeed, Stellantis is on the hook, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, it's been a week, and all we've got from this minister is political theatre. She's bragging about who she gets on the phone. She's bragging about the tough talks she's having. Here's the thing. If they actually included a jobs protection clause in the contract, all they have to do is invoke it. I'm starting to get a terrible feeling. I'm starting to worry that they signed a $15 billion deal with Stellantis and didn't include a guarantee to protect those Canadian jobs. Can the minister tell Canadians very clearly, explicitly, did they include a jobs protection plan for all jobs at Stellantis when they forked over $15 billion?
Mr. Speaker, I know that my colleague is trying to spook Canadians, but I just would like to remind him that the support that was given to the company was linked to the production of batteries, and therefore no money is spent.
Yeah, start from the top, please.
I know my colleague's trying to spook Canadians right now, but I think what is really, really important to remember is that any support from the government was linked to the production of batteries. And in that sense, our support is linked from the moment that the production is happening. The production has not necessarily happened yet. That being said, Mr. Speaker, what we will do is to make sure that we hold Stellantis to account, because obviously jobs are important in at the Brampton facility, and we'll continue to fight for these jobs.
The honourable member for Calgary McKnight.
Mr. Speaker, during the last election, the Prime Minister promised Canadians that he would get a deal with the United States. But since he was elected, tens of thousands of Canadians have lost their jobs, and $54 billion of investment has fled the country. Last week, Stellantis announced its plans to move their Brampton plant to Illinois after the finance minister signed a deal giving them $10 billion taxpayer dollars. Canadian auto workers want to know what job guarantees were in these contracts.
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Mr. Speaker, our colleague has heard very well that the government will make these contracts available to the opposition. So, again, he can assert a series of sort of fabricated conspiracy theories. Doesn't make them true. What is true, Mr. Speaker, is that our government is supporting a proud tradition of building vehicles and cars in Canada. Over 100 years of Canadian workers building these cars. Mr. Speaker, we're going to defend those workers, support those businesses, and fight to ensure we get a deal with the United States that's good for Canadian businesses and Canadian workers.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akiawenrak. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have known it for a while, but the Auditor General has just confirmed it. The Canada Revenue Agency is a Liberal disaster. It's uncontrollable and out of control. Last June, barely 5% of calls were handled within the expected time frame. But even worse, when you do get through, 4 times out of 5, the information provided was wrong. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister for National Revenue. Are they aware that this affects the most vulnerable among us, people on low revenue, seniors, and those who can't pay for an accountant? The Honourable Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for my colleague, and he knows it full well, but Mr. Speaker, he should be overjoyed because we have already acted. We didn't wait for a report to be published by the Auditor General. We've already acted upstream. I enacted a 100-day plan to improve service because we want to offer good services to Canadians, and I'm sure that he will announce it in his riding. We've also tabled in the next budget a way to obtain benefits automatically. That's a great bonus for those who need more, and it will help affordability in our country. I'm sure he's overjoyed right now. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akiawenrak. Well, I'm glad that the minister is happy, but I'd like to remind him that 2 years ago he did the same thing. He claimed, I've met all the leaders of grocery stores and grocery prices will go down. But it's skyrocketed since, and that's the truth of the matter. But back to the CRA, Mr. Speaker. The auditor stated the agency places more importance on adhering to work shift schedules and breaks than on the actual accuracy of information provided to Canadians. What does he have to say about that? The Honourable Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I don't know who is watching QP today, but I'm not sure that the people in Riding will be proud of him attacking those working for the CRA. These public servants do exemplary work. What they need, Mr. Speaker, is that we improve processes, that we improve technology. Everyone wants to offer great service to Canadians. And I know that in his case, he knows that CRA workers are working very hard to serve Canadians, and we'll give them the means to do even better.
Member for Calgary, Midnapore.
Three things are certain in life: death, taxes, and you will wait on hold when you call the CRA, according to today's Auditor General report. CRA's own service standards were only met 18% of the time, with wait times doubling over the last year. Only 17% of agents could accurately provide basic tax information. Complaints have increased by 145% in the last 3 years. So can the minister explain why Canadians are paying so much, yet receiving so little?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look, Canadians deserve timely, accurate, and consistent information from the CRA. We accept the Auditor General's report. We've embarked upon a 100-day plan. Service is improving. We've got a long ways to go, but we are working with the leadership of the CRA. We will make it right. Canadians will get the service they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary, Midnapore.
Well, instead of focusing on other people's jobs, that member should start doing his. Almost 10 years to the date, the Liberals signed a $50 million contract for the CRA call system. It is now almost quadrupled to $190 million. And operational costs at the CRA have increased by 70% under these Liberals. While taxpayers wait on hold, Liberal insiders and contractors cash in. So, does the government have a hang-up with value for money? Is this another Arrive scam?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the CRA for delivering Canadians great service like the Canada Child Benefit, Disability Tax Credit. Where would Canadians be without the CRA delivering COVID benefits? Mr. Speaker, service levels need to improve. We accept the Auditor General's report. We will get this right. Service levels and access are improving. We have a lot more work to do, but we will deliver for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Compton-Stanstead. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP's independence is fundamental to its proper functioning. This is a principle that all responsible leaders should respect and not undermine. Last week, the leader of the Conservative Party decided to criticise the RCMP, saying that they covered up scandals and engaged in political manoeuvring, which is irresponsible and casts aspersions on an institution that protects Canadians. Can the Minister for Public Safety reiterate the importance of the RCMP's independence and remind why it's important to have trust in our institutions? The Honourable Minister.
President.
Mr. Speaker, thank you to my colleague. The Conservative leader's dangerous rhetoric is irresponsible.
The opposition in relation to the RCMP is completely unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. As you know, the RCMP is an independent organization, one that enhances the rule of law in Canada and one that ensures the safety and security of Canadians. Day in, day out, the RCMP officers on the ground work to save and secure this country, and I demand that the Leader of the Opposition retract the statement and apologize to the members of the RCMP.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan. The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, while they continuously try and distract from their irresponsible policy, we on this side of the House stand united against Liberal deficits, against Liberal incompetence, and for the Canadian people. For 10 years, the Liberals have promised deficits would lead to investment, while Canada had the worst per capita growth in the G7 and a more than 10% drop in investment per worker. That's no surprise to Canadians, though. The same government, we have the same failed Liberal policies. So will they finally stop their inflationary deficit so Canadians can afford to live?
Well, Government House Leader.
My honourable friend would like the distractions to stop. I suggest that he tell his leader to not go on podcasts anymore, to not pay for shawarma with crypto, and to not call into doubt the independence of our institutions like the CBC, the Bank of Canada, and the proud men and women of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill South.
Every dollar this Liberal Prime Minister spends is taken out of the pockets of hardworking Canadians through inflationary deficits and higher taxes. Let's not forget that for 10 years, Liberals claimed runaway deficits would spark investment. The current finance minister, back when he was industry minister, helped double the national debt, promising it would lead to growth. And what did Canadians get? The worst per capita GDP growth in the G7, and investment per worker collapsed by more than 10%. So, will he ensure that his next budget will stop the inflationary deficits so Canadians can afford to live again, or will he instead double down on Trudeau's policies and make Canadians pay for his failures?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, while Halloween is coming up, the only thing scary in here is the misinformation coming from the Conservatives. We're cutting red.
I don't know about that. Like, somebody should get that chick a mirror and a brush and show her how to brush your hair. My goodness, McLean is gross.
We're building homes faster, and we've introduced dental care that now more than 2 million seniors have signed up for. We're building an economy that works for everyone, while Conservatives have a record of pushing the retirement age higher. I can't think of anything scarier than that. And while they're voting against support for seniors,
seriously, somebody get that chick a brush.
we're empowering older Canadians, and we're protecting not only their dignity, but their peace of mind.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, for 10 years, this Liberal government has been taking Canadians for a ride. They hold the record for the largest annual deficit. They hold the record for doubling the accumulated deficit of all governments combined over the past 50 years. The direct impact on Canadians' wallets is that everything costs more. They need to stop saying that they are putting more money in Canadians' pockets. Will the Prime Minister keep his promise that the deficit will not exceed $42 billion, which would give Canadians just a little bit of breathing room? The answer is simple, yes or no. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House. Now, Mr. Speaker, the issue with the Conservatives is that they keep talking about inflationary deficits. However, they never identify what an inflationist spending is. Is it helping industry? Is it helping workers? Is it helping with dental care? Is it helping with pharmacare? Could they perhaps give us an iota of identification of what actually is an inflationary spending?
The Honourable Member for Cardigan.
Mr. Speaker, in the 2024 alone, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre reported that Canadians lost millions of dollars to fraud. There's not one person in this House today who does not know a senior, a newcomer, or a vulnerable person who has been affected by financial abuse and scams. Yesterday, our government announced that it's taken action. Can the Minister of Finance provide an update on how our new government plans to help Canadians by combating fraud, financial abuse, and scams? New member, 5 months.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, finally a good question, Mr. Speaker. My colleague and I were proud yesterday to announce a very important measure to combat fraud and financial abuse. Yes, the Conservatives may want to listen to that. and improve financial security for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. In our upcoming budget, we will introduce the first ever national anti-fraud strategy, Mr. Speaker. It will also implement a new financial crime agencies to lead Canada's effort in combating financial crime, Mr. Speaker. And we will also introduce a new code of conduct for prevention of economic abuse. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we understand we need to help our seniors. We need to help the most vulnerable.
The honourable member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin, Nickelbelt.
Mr. Speaker, after years of talk, the Liberals continue to break their promise to get shovels in the ground when it comes to the Ring of Fire. Thousands of jobs and billions of dollars are at stake. Yet the Prime Minister refuses to move this important project along. The Liberals ignored this vital project on their national priority list, a huge slap in the face to Northern Ontario. Will the Liberals stop breaking their promise and get shovels in the ground now so our region can get to work?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the Ring of Fire represents an immense opportunity to develop Canada's critical minerals in partnership with First Nations. We've established a regional assessment working group to advance the Ring of Fire alongside robust consultations with Indigenous rights holders. We're actively working with the province of Ontario to increase regulatory efficiencies, and we look forward to concluding a one project, one review process with the province of Ontario.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Trump is pushing for Stellantis to ship 3,000 jobs from Canada to the United States. And today, GM announced it's closing another plant in Ingersoll. That's another 1,000 jobs, making it clear what we've known from the start, that Trump is set on destroying the Canadian economy. And yet, the Prime Minister continues to flatter Trump, calling him a, in quotes, modern man, in quotes, world-class leader. Mr. Speaker, he's stealing our jobs. When will the Prime Minister finally fight back against this economic extortion and protect jobs and workers in Canada?
L'honorable ministre de l'Industrie.
Mr. Speaker, of course it is not lost on this government that these unjustified tariffs are having real impacts at home and real impacts at the Stellantis plant. That being said, I will of course work with my colleague, work with the NDP, work with Unifor to push back against the decision of the company to make sure ultimately that we hold Stellantis to account. We need to put pressure on. Let's work together. Let's make this happen.
That's it. The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians across the country are suffering from punishing high costs of daily essentials like food, housing and utilities. Grocery prices are sky high and rent is completely unaffordable. Yet, today's inflation numbers show the problem is getting worse, with food up 4%, rent up 4.8%, and 9.6% in Quebec. Under Liberals, life keeps getting harder for workers and their families. When will this government take the affordability crisis seriously, admit their policies are not working, and take effective action to help?
L'honorable ministre des Finances.
Speaker, I want to thank the member for bringing the affordability issue on this floor, Mr. Speaker. We work together. There's a lot we can be proud of what we have achieved together, Mr. Speaker. When you think about dental care, when you think about farmer care, when you think about the National School Food Program, those are all the type of programs, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative call that slogans. When you're on the government side, you call that program because it delivers benefits to Canadians. We're going to continue to work with our colleagues of this House to make sure that we are there for Canadians in times of need, Mr. Speaker.
Alors, ça met fin à la période des questions pour aujourd'hui.
That's all for question period for today. Let's give colleagues a few minutes to quietly exit the chamber.
All right, gang, we're going to wrap it up right there. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. We've been doing this channel for about 2 years, and it's pretty... Well, I don't know. Like, the channel is a good experience following Canadian politics. It's a tough one. Like, I don't know what to tell somebody. Like, should you ignore it? Because if you pay attention, it will get to your... It'll break you down. Like, because it's so dishonest. And when you do follow it, you can see what is going on. Like, I don't think that more than 5% of Canadians follow politics for real? Like, actually know what is going down? I think most people are like, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm an NDP, and they think that they were baptized with that, and it's the only decision they get to make for the rest of their days. I don't know. Like, because if you're a voter, like, you wanted to get rid of Harper, but you didn't know what Trudeau was going to do. And then Trudeau duped everybody for a couple of years. There was a new party for a couple of terms. It's just so strange and frustrating because, like, when, like, to the regular viewers, I'm preaching to the choir, but man, oh man, isn't it frustrating to watch? Like, I don't even know. Like, anyhow, my name's Aaron, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much, Kirk. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and has been tuning in. We've got a really great group here that I like hanging out with every day for a couple of hours watching this foolishness. Like, because if people don't keep track, that's why I'm watching, is because I don't want Canadians to be duped without a chance. So we're trying to give that chance. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. We're back tomorrow. We've got another live show. There'll be videos this evening. We've got lots of stuff to cover. That is it. We're wrapping it up, gang. And this is how we do that.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper, bumper, stomper, boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole. And I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
This is the best part.
Bing bong, knock, knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.
Ding dong, knock, knock, hey daddy do. Tip tap, pitter pat, granny cat too. Rooty toot, kimble, loopy loo. Boppity stompity, romper room. Romper room and friends.
All right, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for watching here. That's it. Kirk, you're the best. Everybody else, you're also a part of the group of the best. That's it. We're going to wrap up right there. Thank you all for watching. Catch you in the next one. Back tomorrow. More videos this evening. We'll see. We'll catch you next time. Ciao for now.